Hey everyone, and welcome to another video. I am Simply G, and today I'm going to be showing you all of my things that I got for September. There's, as always, quite a bit to get through here. Both anime, light novels, manga, the full gamut. So hopefully there's something that most people will enjoy here. And rather than spend too long on this intro, I'm just going to get straight into it, and I hope you guys enjoy. So first and foremost, for Blu-rays, I have some anime series from Kyoto Animation. Both of these series are sort of my lower rung titles, ones that I don't particularly love or rewatch a lot. One of these I have only just recently watched before I picked up this set, but as I said in my last video, I am hoping to get all of the KyoAni shows that I can. If not Munto, everything else, just because I do want to have the studio's body of work in my collection, because even if I don't absolutely love a lot of their series, I do think all of them have value and all of them are definitely worth watching. But the two that I got them on sale, so they were a reduced price, and they are re-releases, so they were cheaper anyway. The first being Myriad Colors Phantom World, which is a newer one of KyoAni's releases. It's an interesting sort of high school club story focused around the supernatural in this world where sort of the supernatural coexists with just reality. But it is very fan service laden, which is a little bit odd for a KyoAni show. It's definitely their most fan servicey show. And then also Lucky Star, which is a very otaku focused comedy about high school girls, one being a super duper otaku. There's a lot of references to very popular franchises and actors and actresses and shows and everything else that were coming out at the same time, and even a lot of voice actor jokes between both the Japanese and English side. It's very of its time. I don't think it's aged particularly well, and even when I watched it for the first time, I didn't find it super duper funny, so it's never been like one of my absolute favorites, but it is just still fun. As I said, there are still some titles that I still need to get, most notably being Nichijou, which is one of my absolute favorites, but I just haven't. There's a new Blu-ray release with Blu-ray only discs, so I am hoping to get that one. I do also need the 2 seasons of Full Metal Panic, and there may be 1 or 2 other things, but I can't think of them immediately. And then I will have all of the KyoAni shows, hopefully, because I do really enjoy this studio. Sound Euphonium is another one. I do enjoy the studio, although they have produced a lot of my favorite series. As I said, these sorts of shows, not super duper my favorite, but I do want to have them just to say, or just to have shown that I've supported this wonderful studio who has done so much good for the industry. Another Funimation Essentials release with the single disc release of Space Patrol Luluko. This is a fun little short series. I think it has 5-ish minute episodes from Studio Trigger. Again, this series is very referential to a lot of their more popular franchises, so if you haven't seen a lot of Trigger stuff, then you might not understand it, but there's references to, I think Kill la Kill is one that most people recognize. I believe there's also references to something else. I can't remember. Oh my god. It's been a while since I've seen it, but it is a very cute little show about a high school girl who joins the Space Patrol after her father is frozen, and this is a world in which aliens, again, like coexist with people. So in order to get the money to pay for her father's defrosting, she joins the Space Patrol and goes on crazy adventures with her partner Nova, who is on the cover here, who is a very hot young boy, her age that she's interested in, and sort of they're spending time together, and her crush on him, and all these wacky worlds that they find themselves in. Next are some franchise films from a franchise I haven't seen a huge amount of, aside from more recent iterations, and this is Lupin the Third, Jigen's Gravestone, and Goemon's Blood Spray. This is a brand new release. I got this one from Right Stuff with the other Funimation titles that I showed off. And then this one I bought via eBay from a local seller, which was really nice. I actually put in an offer and he accepted it pretty much right away, so I saved a lot of money on that one. And this, although I am not a huge fan of Lupin, I haven't seen a lot of the older show. The only stuff that I've really seen is The Woman Named Fujiko Mine, which is a wonderful series by a director I adore. And I've seen bits and pieces of the most recent Lupin series, and I've seen Castle of Cagliostro. It's something that I have great respect for, and I recognize its influence and impact in Japan and just how prolific it is. It's just not something that is super duper high priority for me. But for films, especially of the current sort of generation of Lupin, I'm definitely interested in, and I have wanted to watch these for a long time. I don't know, just something about them. And I haven't actually watched either of these yet, just because I haven't had time. But they are real Discotek releases, and Discotek puts a lot of love into their Lupin releases. So I have no doubts that they are the best they can be. Finally is another franchise film for a franchise that I haven't seen a huge amount of. I've seen the recent iteration of it, and I've seen bits and pieces of the old version. And this I bought because it was very, very, very cheap on Amazon Australia. This is a local release, the only local release that I have in these anime pickups. And this is Sailor Moon S, the movie. This was, I believe, just under $10 on Amazon, which is why I picked it up. Prime, free shipping, no problem. And I wondered why it was so cheap. And then it wasn't until I got the actual disc that I realized that this is a pretty short little film. It's only an hour long. As you can see, 60 minutes. And so that's why. Comparatively, a lot of the other Sailor Moon movies are, and Super S has one, are like $35 retail price, whereas this one is $20 retail price. So there was already a discrepancy, and the fact that it was just less than $10, I was like, well, gotta pick that up. I've been collecting classic Sailor Moon from the local releases pretty much ever since they were first announced. I had the DVD releases, and then I upgraded to Blu-ray when those were announced. The 5th and final season is released in a couple months, the limited edition of that. So I'm looking forward to that, so I can finally say I have all of Sailor Moon, and I can continue my watch of it, because I didn't watch a lot of it when I was younger, so I don't have a huge nostalgia for it. But I haven't yet watched this film, just because I haven't had time. But when I get to this part of the story, which is season 3, I do want to watch this. I believe this is based off of either a side story in the manga or something. The blurb is very familiar to me because I have read the manga. Again, not in childhood, but I have read the manga, so it seems like it's based off of the manga. I don't know, but the plot line is reminiscent, and I have memories of a similar thing happening, so I don't know if that's true or not, but I'm just going to assume that it is. Now on to light novels, and oh boy, there's quite a few of these as well. A couple of them are actually books that I bought a few months ago and either had to replace because of damage, or they just took so long to get to me. And the first one is one that I had to replace thanks to damage, and that is J.K. Haru is a Sex Worker in Another World. This is a novel that I wrote a review about for English novels, lightnovels.com, and absolutely fell in love with it. I think, like a lot of people, a little bit iffy because of the title and the premise, and sort of judged it without really knowing a huge amount about it. But the way that J Novel Club, who is the publisher of this, slanted it and explained the story. It always piqued my interest. It was a very polarizing series. People either loved it or hated it. And I finally wanted to check it out. I had the digital version for a long time, but hadn't read it. But with the sequel, which is actually a series of short stories, J.K. Haru is a sex worker in another world, Summer, I decided that I wanted to finally read it. This print release was also just brand new, so I did. I fell in love with it, absolutely adore it, and I am looking forward to the summer print release as well. I have also read the digital release, and this is the type of light novel that I think, because it's a little bit challenging, it's challenging the status quo. This is marketed as a feminist light novel, and it definitely is. It's directly challenging a lot of the tropes of isekai and a lot of what we see is very popular in light novels currently. The fact that Haru, our main character, is a sex worker, and that's very plain. She's very frank about that. We see a lot of sex in this series, but it's never written in sort of a tantalizing or overtly sexual way. It's just her job. And in that fact, it's really unlike anything else. And I do appreciate stories about people within the adult industry, sex workers, things like that, just because so many people look down on that type of, lifestyle and that type of occupation. But I mean, if people aren't providing those services, then, we know what happens pretty much. And I live in a country where sex work is not illegal. There are certain rules to be followed with it, but it's not an illegal thing to be a sex worker here in Australia. So I come from, I have that sort of social background as well. But Haru is a really interesting character as well. I think she's sort of the antithesis of most isekai protagonists. And I talk about this, I'll link in the description my review about the light novel, but she's the antithesis of what the normal isekai protagonist is, which is usually kind of some schlubby normal dude who doesn't have a lot going on, or is just like super otaku, and when he gets whisked off to another world, he is suddenly very powerful and knowledgeable and really cool, and everyone wants to date him or be his friend, and he's the chosen one. And in this series, we do have a character like that, but we see from Haru's perspective, who she's kind of just a normal girl, but definitely one of those characters that you'd say, like, oh, she was the bitchy girl in high school. She doesn't really get any of this weird otaku stuff. She doesn't have any pre-existing knowledge about, leveling up and fantasy worlds and anything like that. She's just trying to make ends meet and trying to survive in this fantasy world that she's found herself in, and which just so happens to be incredibly sexist, incredibly misogynistic, treats women like absolute crap, and really the only viable way that she's able to make a decent living and have some sort of independence as a woman is to go into sex work, because otherwise she'd be delegated to slave or to someone's wife, and she's really not into that. The only other real viable occupation for women is what's called a sister, like the religious healer type of character, and as she hasn't had years and years of training, she most definitely isn't like pure of heart or, untainted or whatever else that you need to be a sister. She doesn't see that as a viable option either. So it's so good, you guys. Don't judge it from just what the title is or what the premise is. I know a lot of people are very wary about it, as I said, myself included. Some people have called it like way too lewd for what it is. Considering it is about a sex worker, like, be prepared. You're going to be reading about sex, but it's not, as I said, it's not like an erotic experience. If you're going into this book wanting to get off on like all the sex that this character's having, it's not sexy. That's just the plain truth of it. And So it's really, I can't really agree that this is like a really lewd book. Haru definitely uses her body to her advantage, and she is definitely very aware of how male characters see her and treat her, and uses that to kind of manipulate the situation. It's just really, really good. And Haru, for as initially like just kind of that bully main character girl who's bitchy and is normally in manga and light novels is the antagonist, you very quickly grow to love her, and you see all of the dimensions of her and her relationships with the other girls at the club and the other people in the town. It's so, so, so good, and I cannot recommend this novel enough. When I got my first copy and it was damaged, I was so sad and really upset at Amazon, but thankfully they sent me another copy and it is in perfect condition. So I can't wait to reread this one as well, because it is definitely one that I hope to go back to and gain the same things. There's a lot, especially thanks to J Novel Club, there's a lot of very feminist leaning, kind of challenging books that do challenge a lot of the very common tropes in light novels, most notably being like fantasy setting and isekai. The other one is Sexiled, which I also have read and also have an upcoming review for, so look out for that one on EnglishLightNovels.com. And all of them so far have been really good. Sexiled is a little bit over the top, but not in an... If you're a woman, you absolutely have seen this behavior before, and it doesn't seem outside of the realm of possibility. But if you're not someone who is subjected to this type of thing, or doesn't notice these sorts of things within society, then you might think like, this is just ridiculous, they're straw manning, and this is whatever. No, guys, trust me. This as well as Sexiled is a pretty close, accurate representation of being a woman in the modern world, which is very sad to say. And, you know, whatever. But J.K. Haru is a sex worker in another world. Fantastic novel. Definitely pick up the follow-up as well, and I do think that there's going to be more. I don't know, but I really, really hope so, because I love it. I love it. Next is a older light novel, and it's a franchise light novel, and this is the second volume of Pandora Hearts Caucus Race. There's 3 volumes in this light novel series, based off of the manga by Jun Mochizuki, but this is Shinobu Wakamiya's iteration. The first volume is a collection of short stories. I believe all 3 volumes are short story collections focusing on a certain character from one of the 4 houses, and they all sort of loosely interconnect. I haven't had the chance to read this one yet, just because, again, no time. It's a busy time of the year for me, but I really look forward to reading this one, and I hope to get the 3rd and final book very, very soon. If you're a fan of Pandora Hearts, I would encourage you to pick up the light novels, especially because they are becoming a little bit harder to find. There's also little manga editions in these books, so you do get a little bit of Mochizuki flair in there as well. So if you are a fan of the series, you love these characters, you want some more content, I would highly, highly recommend the light novel. Next are 2 books from the same author, from the same publisher, but not really related to each other. The first being Penguin Highway by Tomihiko Morimi, and the second being Morimi's The Night is Short, Walk On Girl. I have seen the films for both of these novels, enjoyed them both, I've read this novel, I've read most of this novel, enjoying them both. Morimi is absolutely one of my favorite Japanese novelists. I think he has a very creative vision of Kyoto. Penguin Highway is his first, or at least in English, is his first real attempt into science fiction. If you haven't seen the films for these or haven't read them, Penguin Highway is a coming-of-age story about a 4th grade boy who is very dedicated to the scientific method. He's very exact and he wants to understand the ways of the world and how everything works. And all of a sudden in his town, all of these penguins start to appear and it's very mysterious. And then there's a girl and it's a story about growing up and also how sticking very strictly to certain beliefs and to certain systems that just rationalize everything and has to find a logical conclusion for everything is kind of counterintuitive to being a kid and learning about yourself and growing up and taking in the world around you. It's very, very, very good. Although from what I can tell, the film is a little bit more risque with certain things, but it is a fun, colorful, beautiful film, and I do recommend it. The Night is Short, Walk On Girl is one that I was really, really excited for. I've wanted to read this book for a long time. I own the film of this one. This is about a university student who basically just wanders around the streets of Kyoto, having fun, out drinking, and interacting with various odd and quirky characters, and the night is very short, and so she has to try and fit in as much as she can, and all of these different plot lines build up around her. It's a great story about human connection and personal relationships, and again, being a young person and figuring things out and discovering things about yourself you didn't realize. This is set in Morimi's version of Kyoto, where the Tatami Galaxy also exists. So if you've seen that show, hopefully, I definitely recommend it. This is, although it's not like a sequel or anything, it's definitely got a lot of crossover. There are characters that do exist in both of those series or film and books. I do hope we see the Tatami Galaxy novel in English as well. I hope both of these books sell well because I want more Morimi in English, because I want Tatami Galaxy and I definitely want The Eccentric Family in English. I love his work, and every adaptation that I've seen of his stuff has been wonderful. So yes, Yen Press has done a great job on both of these books. They're hardcover, slipcover release, and you can actually see, look how cute they designed it. They're looking at each other. It's just a really, really nice design. And you can see here we have the apples, and then we have the penguins on this one. So yeah, Yen has done a great job with these books, and I look forward to seeing more Morimi from them if they choose. Finally, for light novels, we have one of my all-time favorite ongoing series, one that I've been waiting for this volume for a long time, and this one I have read, like with the previous ones. This is Rogan Narita's Baccano, volume 11, which is 1705, The Ironic Light Orchestra. So, if you follow Baccano, or if you've seen the show, this is obviously a prequel. The show, for the most part, is set in the 1930s about New York gangsters and immortality and all of these sort of quirky, weird things and a whole bunch of crazy, kooky characters. Three of which show up in this book, because for those uninitiated, Baccano exists in a world where in 1710, a group of alchemists on board a ship going to the New World, i.e. America, summon a devil, and through that, they gain immortality. They gain this liquid, this drink that, if drunk, they can live forever. And so everyone on board gains immortality, and so they can live forever. But it also allows them to, the only way to kill an immortal is for another immortal to eat them, as it were, and take their knowledge and take it into themselves. And so for a lot of the early books, there's a lot of tensions between these immortals, because Some want to get rid of the others and want to become all powerful and gain all this knowledge. Others are just trying to live harmoniously or not really worry about each other, not bother each other. And in the 1930s, many of these alchemists are still around under new identities or living new lives in the modern age, because they don't age and they're still alive, they're immortal, they can't be killed, and they don't get any older. So, this is a prequel to that 1710 sail to the New World, and this follows, most notably, Huey Laforet, who is sort of an antagonist in the main series. This is from when he was a 15-year-old boy, still studying alchemy in small town Italy, just off Naples, and his friendship with a character called Elmer, and a new character of whom I believe is definitely a fan favorite. This is the first time she's shown up, and her name is Monica Campanella. There's also a lot of, with all of these books, they introduce a whole bunch of different crazy characters, and in this particular book, it's very self-contained in that it feels a lot like a short story, and it just kind of gives you an idea of how these characters met and why they have the relationship that they do so many years later, 300 odd years later. So the three of them are teenagers, they're all within the same alchemy class, and in this small town there is a serial killer who has killed 27 people so far, and so there's a big mystery around that, and there's a lot of annoyance between Huey and how he perceives the world, and how he feels he's been rejected by the world, and thus he hates the world. And Elmer being himself, trying to break through that barrier, but then also the things that they have in common, despite having completely different personalities. It's very, very, very good, and I'm a huge Baccano fan, obviously. I have also written a review for this one, so look for it this week. It might even already be out by the time I post this. But wonderful, wonderful little novel. And although it doesn't really feed a lot into the main plot line, which is the 1930s plot line, it does give perspective and insight to these particular characters, as well as introducing some characters whom I expect we will see in future novels. It is also the introduction of this 1700s timeline, because in the other books we have, of course, the main plot line, which is the 1930s, but we also have a 2000s plot line, so 70 years after that, where again we see a lot of these same characters who are unaging and can't die. So you see how with time things have changed, and how these characters interact, and how circumstances bring them together or pull them apart. It's very, very, very good, and more Baccano is always wonderful. We are quickly catching up with 11. We are halfway through what is available in Japanese, and from what I understand, the series has been on hiatus for a couple years. The final book, or at least the penultimate book, because what is expected is there's one book left of a particular storyline, the main storyline, to finish up, and then there's an epilogue book after that. But there may also be more books, but Narita hasn't been writing it just because he's been working on other things. So if we catch up in due time, that'll be both a good and a bad thing. But we have plenty more of Baccano to look forward to. And if you are looking for a long-running light novel series that isn't of the various isekai genre that is very popular right now, pick this one up. Do it! It's so good. And Narita is wonderful at writing characters and having multiple perspectives just running around and not be confusing whatsoever. And all of the characters being really distinct and wonderful and interesting as well. It's a great series. I can't gush about it any more than I already do. First and foremost, for manga, we have a secondhand release that I got from Better World Books. It's extra library, but I've been meaning to get this last volume for a while, just haven't had the opportunity. And I tried to buy this like 3 times, and my copy always got lost in the mail. I don't know why. I feel like this title has cursed me, but this is volume 6 of The Key to the Kingdom by Kyoko Shito. This is a CMX release, and this is a fantasy series about a young prince who lives in a fantasy world. There's dragons and things like that, who's trying to find the key to the kingdom so he can become the king of this kingdom. And then there's also various other individuals who are also looking for the key so that they can claim the throne after the death of his older brother. So there's a lot to enjoy. It's a pretty classic type of story, and it is short at only 6 volumes. I've read the first volume, haven't read the rest, just because I did want to wait to have this final volume before I dive right into it. And I find CMX manga an interesting little thing because there's so many just surprising titles that were even at the time a little bit ahead of their time, things that people don't really know about or have heard about. And so whenever I see a CMX title, I do try to pick it up because they definitely had some unknown gems in their library. I'm really looking forward to reading this one in its entirety finally. And yeah, it's just a solid little fantasy series, and I've heard pretty good things about it. Next is a older series, but it is new copies of them. And both of these were on sale, which is why I picked them up. And this is volume 1 and 2 of Honey and Clover by Chika Umino. This is a seinen story about a bunch of students at an art school and their various relationships and friendships and interactions. Umino is a great mangaka. I think her recent series, March Comes in Like a Lion, is probably what a lot of people know her for, but the anime for this show is also very well known. I'm really looking forward to the Blu-ray release from Discotek. I am looking forward to upgrading my DVD copies because this is a beautiful story. Highly recommend it, especially if you like sort of dramatic coming of age romance type of stories. It's done beautifully. Uno is wonderful at just showing this very raw, complicated version of life and very, very true to life problems of first love or just love in general and unrequited love and all things like that. I have read a little bit of this manga before. As I said, I've seen the show, so I do know the story, but it is a 10-volume series, and I'm hoping to get the rest of them. Because these 2 were on sale, they were less than half price, I decided to pick them up just so I could encourage myself to get the rest of them. I've been meaning to do it for years. I've said that with a couple series before. I'm just very, very slow, and with so many other great new series coming out, sometimes my priorities get bumped down and down and down. But now with these 2 volumes, hopefully I will collect the other 8 sooner rather than later. Next, we have some ongoing new releases. The first one being The Girl from the Other Side, Volume 7 by Nagabe. Oh my god, I love this series so much. Cliffhangers galore. Oh my goodness, you guys. If you're not reading this, it is somewhat like a twisted folklore fairy tale story about a young girl who lives in the outskirts with a monstrous looking individual who she calls teacher, who is, and usually everyone who's living in the outskirts is poisoned by like a curse and they become similar monstrous creatures, but she for some reason has not had this problem. And so now the people of the town believe she's this girl of prophecy and they have to sacrifice her to get rid of the curse entirely. There's a lot going on, and oh my god, tension and mystery And there definitely comes to a head in this particular volume. There's certain sequences in this book that I was on the edge of my seat for. Honestly, this series just continues to get better and better and better. And if you weren't a super duper fan of the first volume, I'd encourage you to try the second at least. It's not going to be a series for everyone, but I just love this, how well it balances this level of like fear and mystery and just unease and tension, and then a really sweet domestic side of it as well, of family and understanding and just day-to-day life. It's just so good, and I love Nagabe's works. Yeah, I'm really looking forward to whenever a new volume of this comes out. It's always fantastic. Next is a book that I've been so super excited for. I had to readjust my camera because otherwise it's not going to fit in frame. But this is the debut volume of The Poe Clan by Moto Hagio, Volume 1 by Fantagraphics Books. It's so beautiful, guys. Oh, I love Fantagraphics Books. Anyway, they do a great job, and I'm really happy that my copy got to me in one piece, considering Amazon decided to send it to me in a bubble mailer, which was not great. And long-time watchers of my channel know I'm a huge Hagio fan. I love her and her work. I own, I think, everything that has been released in English of her titles. And this is a somewhat unusual story comparatively to a lot of her work. She is most well known, aside from The Heart of Thomas, which is incredible, and I encourage everyone to read, especially if you're a fan of manga that kind of impacted history and the medium as a whole. I would encourage you to read that. But this is somewhat in line with that release because it is the more classic European setting. This is very episodic and sort of slice of life-y insofar as it's not really told in a linear structure, which plays to the understanding of vampires and their immortality and how they perceive the passage of time. Because if you don't know this, it's a story about vampires. It's wonderful and overdramatic and 70s and just beautiful. But it is very different from a lot of Hagio's work. She's definitely more well known for her sci-fi stuff. And so at the time, even comparatively to Heart of Thomas, at the time, this was very, very different, not only for herself, but for what was just generally done. The nonlinear narrative was a big, new thing, and really drew people into the story. And it also helped gain new readers because you could pick up the magazine that it was being released in at any point and just go straight into reading it, and you wouldn't necessarily have lost any information. You could just enjoy it chapter by chapter. So it was very easy for people to get into. Wonderful. Long-time watchers, as I said, know I'm a huge Hagio fan. I actually own even of her, because Fantagraphics Books has put out a lot of her stuff, including The Heart of Thomas and Otherworld Barbara. But we do also have like very, very, very old releases of things like AA Prime, as well as They Were 11 from Viz. I don't think there's anything else aside from she does also have a one-chapter or one-shot included in the Neo Parasite M anthology, which is honestly the best part of that anthology. It's the first story, it's the best story. So I'm a big fan, and I think if you are a fan of the over dramatic and wonderful type of manga that were coming out of the Year 24 group and the 70s shoujo movement, then I highly encourage you to pick this one up. support the ones that we have or are getting to encourage more to come, because I'd love to see more Year 24 group available in English. Because as much as I love Hagio and as much as work as we have in English, the fact that we're only just now getting Rose of Versailles is like a little bit baffling, considering how influential and important that manga is. And aside from Ikeda and Hagio, there are other creators with huge libraries that a lot of people in the West haven't even heard of. So I would love to see more of their stuff being licensed and brought to English. But anyway, I do hope that people try this one. It is definitely a little bit different from a lot of Hagio's works, and I wouldn't say representative of her body of work in general, but I think it's one that most everyone can enjoy, especially if you do like the classics of 70s shoujo. Yeah, it's just beautiful, and Fantagraphics Books does such a good job. And as well, I mean, as soon as I got it, I read it, no questions. But I think it's a testament to the book, to how it looks, and to the story itself, that my sister, of her own volition, someone who very rarely reads manga, decided to pick this one out of the stack of books of my new releases that I had to read. And from what I can tell, was enjoying it very, very much. I always like to highlight when we get books of this nature, ones that are not only classics and wonderful and important to manga history, I guess, but also that really show how far we've come as a market, because honestly, this would not have been licensed, in my opinion, if we weren't at a point where classic manga, especially classic shoujo, was gaining some traction. So I hope we see more of this ilk very, very soon. But yeah, beautiful. It's pricey, but for Fantagraphics Books, you always get your money's worth, and it's just a beautiful release. Next, we have the most recent release volume of My Hero Academia by Kohei Horikoshi, volume 20. This is the end of the previous arc, the beginning of the new arc, and this is where I am going to stop buying for a while, because I have been following this one via the Shonen Jump app, and thus I'm up to date, but I don't really, I mean, it's My Hero Academia. Like, I don't need to be buying it for it to be doing well. It's definitely one of the most popular Shonen Jump titles right now, for good reason. It's formulaic, yes. It's a pretty typical premise, of course, but it's just done very, very well. It's very likable. All of the characters, for the most part, are pretty interesting, and there's a lot of creativity that Horikoshi puts into his work. I like a lot of the arcs for this, and I like how all of the characters utilize their various quirks. I don't need to encourage people to read this, because most people already are. As I've said with last couple of volumes, I was waiting to get to a point where, like, a natural stopping point, not because I dislike the series or whatever. It is just very, very low priority for me, especially considering that the series is on the Shonen Jump app, so I can read it readily, legally, no problem. And physical book sales aren't really going to be impacted by me just waiting until a couple volumes are released to pick up the rest. This one is definitely one that I think a lot of people either discovered anime and manga through. It's definitely a gateway type of series, or just sort of the quintessential big shonen that is always very popular within the community. Is it perfect? No, of course not, but I do enjoy it a lot for what it is, and I will at some point get the rest, I'm sure, unless it really goes off the rails, which is always a possibility, unfortunately, but I really doubt it. And I do really enjoy this particular arc that we're leading into with this volume. There's a lot of good stuff about My Hero Academia. As I said, I like it a lot. So, you won't see me buying volumes for this for the foreseeable months, year, even multiple years perhaps, but rest assured, I still enjoy it. I'm still a fan. I plan to get it, the rest of it, for whenever that may be, but as I said, not a super duper high priority for me. We have another Viz title with one of this month's debuts, and that is The Way of the House Husband by Kosuke Ono. I haven't had a chance to read this, but I think like everyone else, I've seen the manga caps online. I know what it's about. I know I'm gonna love it. This is about an ex-yakuza who has become a house husband, and although he is now someone who stays at home, looks after sort of the household whilst his wife is at work and has gotten out of the business, as it were, he's still very intimidating and kind of keeps getting sucked back, or people still try to encourage him to come back to the yakuza despite his really wanting to be rid of that life. And sort of the humor in the fact that this burly, tough guy, very ominous looking and dangerous looking guy is, preparing lunch for his wife when she comes home and doing the laundry and going to, the food sales at the supermarket in the middle of the day. It's just, and also the challenges of him having to do that, because running a household is a difficult job for most, if not everybody. It's not, people think housewives or whatever have it easy. It's not an easy job. And you see that being reflected in his experiences. Obviously, he's a tough guy. He can handle anything. He can beat anyone to a pulp, whatever, but he still has issues with doing the laundry or vacuuming or whatever else. And so there's comedy in that. It's just really, really good. I'm really looking forward to it. And honestly, as soon as I stop filming this, I'm probably going to jump right into reading it. Everyone who I know who's read it, even before it was licensed, loved it. And it was kind of a no-brainer in my eyes for it to be licensed. So I'm really glad that Viz has brought it to us. And then we have a finale for a Viz title. One that has been a long time coming. And up until the end, it has stayed its goofy, weird, likable, off-the-rails self. And I cannot love it enough for that. And this is Dorothy DOro by Q Hayashida. This is volume 23. Final volume, as it says here. Hayashida used to be a assistant for Miura of Berserk fame. So you know that there's going to be a lot of blood and guts and gore and just viscera within this series. It doesn't shy away from anything, so this is not for the faint of heart. It's been a long time coming with this particular volume, and a lot of things were wrapped up. I really enjoyed the ending. If you just love all of the really weird, quirky cast of characters, which honestly, how could you not? All of them really get their time to shine here. The story you can feel built up very naturally and in a very exciting and anticipatory way. I just love this series, and honestly, even if you aren't a fan of a lot of gore and violence, as I don't mind it, but it's not my first choice. Hayashida, for all of that, has a really, really likable domesticity and representation of friendship and family and love in this series that I think other series haven't been able to capture in the same way. I just love how these characters interact, and I love their personalities and how much that their personality influences the world around them and the choices they make. It's just wonderful, And if you're a long-time fan of Dorothy DOro, you will not be disappointed by this ending. At least I don't think so. Yeah, this is a thick volume as well. I mean, comparatively to Way of the House Husband, let's look. This is probably the same width that the first volume of Dorothy DOro was, and now we have gotten to this chunky one. So you're getting a lot of value for this particular volume as well. It's great. It's one that keeps you on your toes. It's one that's just really off the wall, bizarre, weird, super violent, but in an understandable way. And all of the characters, no matter how violent, no matter how disturbed, no matter how just crazy they are, they're all just really likable as well. I don't know. There's a lot of really good things here. There's a lot of moral gray in this series. It's not an easy one to recommend, but if you do like very dark, brutal types of series, I would encourage you to try this one. Next, we have volume 3 of Witch Hat Atelier by Kamome Shirahama. Again, beautiful series, magic and a young girl and illustration, and I have said this before, this is a really wonderful magic system. I love how this series never shies away from trauma and how these characters deal with their powers. Okay, this volume introduces this character. I love him so much. He's a sweetheart, and this is a great character, great addition. Oh my god, you guys. It's so good. Witch Hat Atelier, I think, found its way into a lot of people's hearts, a lot of people's collections for very good reason. Shirahama captures the magic of her world incredibly well. She's an incredibly talented illustrator and artist, and that love for illustration and artwork is mirrored perfectly in here. We also have the larger mystery of, the two sides of magic, good and dark, and then of course the brimmed caps and the pointed caps. It's so good. It's so good. Again, I've said this for many titles already, but there are so many good titles coming out, and Kodansha's done a great release with this one. I love it. It's beautiful, and if you haven't tried it yet, I greatly encourage you to. It's very reminiscent of Ghibli. It reminds me a lot as well of Mary and the Witch's Flower, which is from Studio Ponok, which is from Studio Ghibli, sort of like rose from the ashes of Studio Ghibli. So if you like that type of magical story and fanciful world with some really decent three-dimensional characters and a lot more heart and meat to it, I would absolutely recommend this series. Then we have a Dark Horse volume with volume 2 of Emin, The Wanderer. This is actually technically volume 1 of part 2 of this series. It's got weird numbering, but Dark Horse just makes it all the same, like, ongoing title. This is a sci-fi story about a young woman who holds the memories of the entirety of the world's history, and the various people that she interacts with and tells the story with, and her experiences. This particular volume, the first part, like part 1 or the first half of it, you will see, and I have to be careful because nudity, full color, which is a nice surprise. I didn't expect this from Dark Horse, but yeah, nudity, so I can't really just like open it willy-nilly. And then of course just the later half we have the normal artwork. I really like the style. I think it suits this particular story very, very well, and it's just lovely. I enjoy this series a lot. I'm not a big fan of sci-fi, I wouldn't say, and I haven't read, or I've read a little bit of Tsuruta's previous work, which is Wandering Island, which is interesting, but not one that I have bought. So we do have other works by him, and that one's written and drawn by him, whereas this one's just drawn by him. This is based off of the writing of Shinji Kagio. But yeah, it's a solid little series so far. Volume 1 was very strong. The second volume was a great follow-up to it. And I just like a lot of these vignettes. It is very, very, very reminiscent, in my opinion, to stories like Mushishi. So if you're a fan of that type of series, or if you're a fan of Mushishi, definitely pick this one up. Dark Horse I've had my issues with in the past, but it is obvious that they are trying to put out a lot more titles, manga, and put a lot more focus to their manga in these coming years and for the future, which I have to give them credit for. They are doing a great job. And I look forward to Emin on Wander Part 2, which is technically Volume 3. We'll see. So yeah, I hope we see it in the next couple months, because sometimes the biggest issue with Dark Horse is the wait time, the turnover time. It does take them a while to put books out. Okay, and then we also have one title from Vertical, and this is another one that I haven't read yet, which is probably not a good idea considering how risky this book might be. This is volume 5 of My Boy by Hitomi Takano, and as I said, I haven't read it yet, but from what I can tell, just flipping through, I still think that this story isn't gonna, or it hasn't reached the point where our characters are in a romantic relationship. I think there's worries, or there's a one-sided interest from our young boy here, our 15-year-old boy, which is understandable considering his past relationship and his reliance on our main character and her being like a support system for him in his youth. And yeah, I've said this before, so far in the series, and I can't say it with volume 5 because I haven't read it yet, but even volume 4, like, there's always the possibility that this series could become, yes, it's an age gap romance between two individuals, one of whom is a minor, and it's a big age gap, like a lot of years, like 15 to 18 years, so, you know, that's an issue. Because one of them is a minor, not in general, but I'm not a big fan of age gap romances anyway. But I have said with this series, and so far with this series, and I think also in this volume, that that's not really what the story is about, and that's not what I think is going to be the end point for the series, because I think more notably than like a romantic relationship, this is a story about finding support systems, and both of these two very lonely individuals found support in each other. And as I said, whether that develops to a romantic interest, I don't know, but the manga is very, very self-aware that is a weird thing, and that the fact that they are friends and they have such a large age difference, and that, you know, possible romantic feelings from or between them, especially from the adult side, is just like not appropriate. It's not accepted by society for good reason, and people can be very wary of that, again, for good reason. I think it's also very understandable and very realistic that this younger boy does attach himself and does attach a lot of his feelings and is realizing a lot of his feelings because of this woman, or that he has for this woman because of, as I said, her role in his life when he was younger. It all makes sense to me. But as I said, if you are particularly sensitive to those topics, you might just want to wait and avoid this series because as I said, it could go either way. But so far, like, even in comparison to, because I do know that like Ran in the Grey World does have, from what I understand, kind of a confirmed relationship between a minor and an adult at the end of it. It's not inherently the focus of that series, but it is like a part of it, and it is something that's like, yes, this is just part of the story. And if you're not a fan of that, this series doesn't handle this relationship in the same way that that series does. None of the younger character, the minor, is never sexualized as well, which is a big thing around the Grey World. It, like, comparatively, and also like a Bride story, which again has like an adult and a minor who are in a romantic relationship, but culturally, like, that's a whole different story, and again, not really sexualizing the minor. There's a lot of different levels that these types of relationships can be portrayed and can be written, and that people will accept as well. Long-time watchers know that I don't like age gaps, even between two adults, unless they're written well. I will be a little more lenient to series that I do enjoy otherwise, that have that aspect to it. And this story, as I said, I feel there's much more of a argument to make for the platonic relationship between these two. And there may be this element of conflict and, you know, being heartbroken and rejection and romance there, but I don't think it'll be endgame. I might be completely wrong on that. We'll see. But so far, so good. And as I said, I haven't read this particular volume, but from what I can have just seen flipping through, I don't think it's, you know, jumped the shark, and I don't think these two are dating or anything like that. So if you are like me and you already love the series, or if you gave it a shot and you're invested, or if you like stories about, you know, support systems and loneliness and finding other people who relate to you regardless of your backgrounds and your age and all of that, then definitely check this one out. But if you are iffy about romance between very large age differences, especially where one is a minor, give this one a miss, or at least don't read it until it's over and you know how it ends, because then you'll know not to read it or if it's for you or not. But yeah, so far I haven't had an issue with it, and it is really beautiful. It's really like heartfelt, and I don't know, it just breaks my heart a lot, and there's a lot that I really love for this series, so I cannot in good faith not continue buying it and reading it and supporting it whilst it's not actively like making me worried about how things will turn out, especially when I am buying things like Ran in the Grey World, where I do know that the issues I have are like legitimate issues and things that are in the manga just outright. So, you know, you might not agree with me, and as I said, again, like with a couple of these other stories or series, it isn't a series for everyone, but I do encourage people to try it. On to Yen Press, and Yen is, I think, the publisher I have the most from this time. Maybe Viz, but there's a lot of exciting stuff from Yen, so that makes up for it. First, we have kind of an, I say quote-unquote, older series. It's not old, it's just not a new release. Fruits Basket Another by Natsuki Takuya. This is the sequel to, obviously, Fruits Basket, with the second generation of Soma children and a girl who goes to their school. So, I've said it before with this series, but although this is kind of just like, oh, fan service for the fans, you get to see all of the children of your favorite characters and how things turned out. I do think there's more to this series than that. Because, okay, Fruits Basket, the original series, is about how Toru helps, and the other characters help Toru, but how Toru helps the characters, the Somas, break the cycle of abuse they were stuck in giving them hope and giving them support, in showing them like actual love and acceptance without having them do things for her and things like that. So it's definitely about breaking that cycle of abuse and breaking these generational worries and pressures that the Soma children, or the Soma family, zodiacs, were subjected to. And so in place, this sequel is very much about the Somas kind of giving back and helping our main character break out of her own abusive situation, her own relationship with her mother and how she perceives herself and how she interacts with other people. It doesn't have to be groundbreaking, but I do think there's something beautiful about having something as major to the story, like with this theme of abuse and escaping it and coming out a stronger person because of it, is so powerful. And then passing on those same lessons to your children, who can then apply it to other people in the world, and how kindness and acceptance and helping people just from the genuine part of your heart impacts the world, and how that will impact their life and how they can go on and help others. It's just like, it's a really, really good message, and I think it's a great follow-up to this series, which really you couldn't follow up anyway. Like, you're never going to follow up Fruits Basket with a series that's going to be just as groundbreaking, just as amazing, just as award-winning, and all wonderful, and people just adore it. It's never going to be as popular. So I think that by having a short series that's only 3 volumes long, that does give fans like little snippets of fun little, just additions and follow-up epilogue to the main story. It's not necessary, but I think by having this element of our main character and her relationship with her mother, it gives it more of a purpose than if it was just like, oh yeah, you want to see all the children of your favorite characters? Here you go. So yeah, it's not a perfect series again, but if you are a Fruits Basket fan, I do think you'd probably enjoy it. And if you are reading Fruits Basket now and you're enjoying it, I do encourage you to pick this one up. It's not a necessity, of course. Fruits Basket is in its entirety and the full parcel definitely complete. It doesn't need a follow-up, but to have a follow-up like this one is nice. It's just nice to have. Then we have volume 10 of Silver Spoon by Hiromu Arakawa. I just got volume 9 last month, and as always, it's wonderful. This particular volume, our students are making sausages out of the pigs that they bought. And it's great. And Hachkin meets his sister-in-law, and we get the return of a particular character after his absence from the story for a long time. Silver Spoon's just wonderful. It's always great. I love it a huge amount. It's funny, it's witty, it's got a lot of heart, and it's very serious in a lot of aspects. I've spoken a lot about how I really respect how Arakawa writes about things she knows that are very near and dear to her heart, her how she portrays agriculture as something that isn't inherently good or bad, it just is, and unfortunately as part of modern society, there are certain things that are in place to feed entire countries. I've said my piece about how there's definitely conversations to be had about sustainable agriculture and the agricultural system and things that could be changed insofar as like animal welfare and all of this, but I am not personally a vegetarian. I do know a lot of people are for various reasons, whether that be religious, dietary, moral, whatever. Super cool. If you are a particularly sensitive vegetarian, this is probably not the series for you, because it does have very it doesn't shy away from the realities of the agricultural system, which I think is a good thing. It's a powerful thing, and I think more people need to be aware of where their food comes from. They shouldn't be passive consumers. And I have also said that I think in the West, there's definitely probably more so of an awareness of where our food comes from than in certain countries like Japan, where people don't really think too hard about like where their food is from and how it's made and the animals, like what farmers actually do. Comparatively, a lot of the time, especially in the US, in Australia as well, we have a lot of people who grew up in the agricultural system on farms, on plantations, on things like that. So it's definitely like a different culture. There are certainly people who live in the city, haven't seen a farm animal in their entire life, but there's plenty of people who do have family who live on a farm or have ducks or, you know, grow lemons or whatever. So there's much more awareness, and I think there's also much more awareness of where your food comes from, things being organic and sustainable and free range and all of these other things. So like the Western perspective versus the Eastern perspective is very different, and I do think that a lot of what Arakawa draws as like fish out of water comedy is maybe not so relevant for the West, but I do think that it needs to be shown, and I do really think that she's taken the opportunity to write something about what she loves, because, and again, I've said it with the last 9 volumes, but Arakawa grew up on a dairy farm. She does know what she's talking about. I'm sure she has experienced a lot of what happens in this manga personally, either through herself, her family, or friends. And so I can see, and I've said it again before, that I think Fullmetal Alchemist is definitely her most popular work. A lot of her other series are very popular as well, Heroic Legend of Arslan, etc. But I do think that this series is her magnum opus, is the story that she's wanted to tell, and the story that's most important to her, that is most close to her heart, and what she values the most from her creative library, what she's made. Love it, it's wonderful. And if you like animals, especially horses, this is a great series as well. There's a lot of horse riding, there's plenty of cows, pigs. Unfortunately, if you're super attached to pigs, maybe don't read this one. But all dogs, chooks, whatever. You definitely see this farming life that these kids are in and completely absorbed into. And a lot of them through their family. They just come from a farming background, so they're there, and they hope to, you know, take up the family business and continue it successfully for the next generation. It's good. Read it. Just read it, guys. We have another debut, and this is one that I've been highly anticipating. When I got it in the mail, I was so excited. I didn't know what... I had ideas of what to expect. I didn't know exactly what it was even about, but it just sounded right up my alley, and thankfully, it totally was. So this is Phantom Tales of the Night by Matsuri. This is a beautiful release. I really love the artwork in this one. And this is about a inn owner, mysterious inn owner who welcomes guests and asks them for a secret in exchange for helping them. And it's very, like, it's very reminiscent of something like Holic or Pet Shop of Horrors. It's like creepy and mysterious, and our main character, this onsen or this inn owner, is definitely like very not what he seems. He's very monstrous and doesn't really think in human terms, isn't very empathetic to a lot of the ways of humanity. It's just really, really wonderful. And as I said, if you enjoy things like Holic or Pet Shop of Horrors, check this one out. It is wonderful. I really look forward to the next volume. And I could kind of tell just from the premise and the front page or the cover that I would like this. And I know myself so well. You guys know me. I'm a huge yokai and like supernatural, eerie, creepy, folklore fan. It's just something that I really dig. And although it is completely different from something like Natsume's Book of Friends or Mushishi, I like this element of this genre as well. So if you are like me, pick this one up. You will not be disappointed. I don't know when Volume 2 comes out. I hope soon, because I'm really enjoying it. And we have our main onsen, or I don't know if it's an onsen, innkeeper, and then we have his two servants, his right-hand man, Butterfly and Spider, and they have their own stories within this story. And we see glimpses of like feuds and sorcery or like spiritualists. It's really good. It's really good. And yeah, cannot wait to have another look into this series with Volume 2. Finally, for Yen Press manga, we have this volume, one of my all-time favorite ongoing manga. I've had quite a few of this particular pickup, so it's been a really good month for me. I don't know, September, especially because I didn't get a lot of yen stuff last month, so maybe that's why. Bride Story, Volume 11, Karumori, my gal, always pulls through. This is, oh, look how beautiful it is. Let's see what, oh, it's so gorgeous. So this particular volume follows these two characters here. The seasons are changing. It is now winter, and we have Mr. Smith and his relationship with this woman who we met in previous volumes, volume 3 or 4, so established characters, and their relationship is very interesting. I've said this before with A Bride Story, even if you're not in love with the main couple, Amir and Karluk, who I do love them. They're wonderful and they're written fantastically. There are so many other characters and couples to enjoy from this series that I think there's still something for most people to enjoy if they are a fan of this genre. Oh my god. Oh, it's so beautiful. Guys, oh, it breaks my heart. I love it so much. Oh god. And yeah, a large portion of this book is dedicated to photography, which is really nice. Oh, guys, it's so beautiful. And there's this particular scene. I actually cried. I just love how lovingly Mori portrays human relationships and how domestic and just lived in these people feel. They feel like real people. They don't feel like characters, if that makes sense. They definitely have very realistic personalities, and you can see how she just is magical in showing how relationships develop. I love this particular, oh god, everything about this manga I just love. And you guys know that. People who have watched this channel for an extended period of time know that I'm a big fangirl. I just love Mori's work. I hope we see more of it in English as well. Please, Yen, give me Shirley. But yeah, A Bride Story never disappoints. Never, ever, ever disappoints. It is phenomenal in every single way. And if you have not tried this series yet, I would highly encourage you to. I know, as I've said before, there are people who may be wary because the main couple has a large age gap, especially with one of those characters being what we consider a child now, underage at 12 years old, which is like, that is a child, but historically, which is when this series is written, that wasn't uncommon. People did get married at 12, not to people who are hugely older than them, but I'm sure it wasn't unheard of either for that to happen. child marriage has been something that's been in history all over the world for the entirety of history, and of course modern perspective on that is very different to the at the time perspective. So I don't really judge their relationship in those terms. Plus, again, as I said, it's written really well, written really respectfully. Nobody is, or especially the minor, is not sexualized, and you can really see the mutual respect between the characters. And as I said, with this particular series, because this is really the only series that we do have a large age gap like that with her works, you can see there's a whole butt ton of other characters to enjoy. Paria and her fiance is wonderful. These two characters, the twins are probably the most annoying of the bunch, but I do like them. The two women with the same husband, there's just so much variety and interesting. It's so good. It's so good. And if you haven't been reading it, check it out. I encourage you to wholeheartedly. Finally, we've made it to BL. There's not a huge amount here, so we'll get through this hopefully pretty quickly. But first and foremost, we have the most recent volume of Ten Dance by Inio Sato. Oh, guys. Again, this is probably, of BL titles, this is one of my favorite ones coming out. This volume, we have actual development of the relationship. Oh, it's so good, guys. It's so good. Oh, see, okay, the great thing about slow burn romance is that when things happen, it's all that more satisfying. I love this series. It has great female as well as male characters. It's funny, it's likable, you can understand these characters' motivations, what attracts them to each other, why they actually even meet in the first place. It's so good. And if you're a BL fan and you're not reading this, try it out. It's super duper wonderful. It has great understanding of ballroom. I've said it before, but ballroom is an incredibly chemistry-filled sport, as is expected. So these two characters have amazing chemistry, which is always nice when you have a romantic relationship between characters. It's because it's not always there, let's be real. It's just wonderful. I love this manga so much. Whenever I get the new volume, I read it immediately, and it never disappoints me. In fact, it just continues to get better and better and better. I can understand if you're not a fan of slow build or slow burn romances and you just want like one or two volumes in and out. It's like you get your happy ending pretty much immediately. I get that. This series isn't that. And you're probably going to have to be waiting until it is that. So, if you're avoiding it because of that, more power to you. But if you're like me, who likes watching a relationship grow and blossom and watch these characters kind of circle each other for a while before they just go in and realize that they're on the same wavelength, then maybe you should check this one out because it is marvelous. And there's a lot of good BL coming out currently. The next volume I'm going to be talking about is another one. But you guys know I'm really picky when it comes to boys love or yaoi. I don't buy everything. I have artists that I enjoy. I have particular series that I enjoy. I definitely have one particular guilty pleasure that I enjoy but wouldn't recommend to anyone. I'm very aware of what I do like and dislike in BL. And I think if you are a BL fan, you have to have that. And we definitely have the choice in that now, more so than ever. And I just think that if I, who is so picky with boys love in general, can love a series this much in the next series this much, then maybe it's got some value to it. Yeah, it's just wonderful. And if you are a fan of any of these things that I've talked about, check it out. And following that with another BL series that I adore, love, wonderful, so happy to have in English, Classmates, Volume 2. Technically, this is not Classmates, this is the first volume of Graduates, which is the sequel to Classmates. So it's Sotsugyosei, compared to Dokyusei, which was the first volume, by Asumiko Nakamura. And this is obviously the continuation of the story of Classmates, where we have our two characters who are now seniors in high school, and their relationship, I think they were always seniors in high school, but their relationship as winter has come and graduation is impending, and the decisions of whether they're going to university and what they're going to do after school, which is always, it's always an issue with this type of thing and high school. Nakamura, I love you. Everything you do, I love you. She is wonderful, and I'm so glad we have gotten this series in English. I own all of her English language works. They are marvelous and all wonderful. I love this particular series. I even owned the original June digital releases, which are terrible, and I do not recommend them. But I'm so happy that Seven Seas has put out these new print releases for such a beloved series. Oh, man, I've talked about this series in relationship and comparison to the Kase-san and series, which is of course a Yuri series, so featuring a romantic relationship between two girls. This of course being Boys Love BL, a relationship between two boys. And there's a lot of similarities in these series. They're both they're both really good representations of this type of love in high school and the issues that come out of it. They feel like real characters and real issues that teens have when they are in their real first serious relationship in high school. We do have sort of similar kind of opposites attract personalities between the couples, and both of these stories follow our characters for a long period of time. They do see them age out of high school and go into university or into the workforce, which is not something you get with all of romance manga in general, but especially BL and Yuri. So they're both wonderful. They both do great things. And Classmates, again, if you're a fan of BL, I would highly encourage you to read this, but I don't really think I need to encourage people to read this because it really has, its reputation precedes it, and it's a well-deserved reputation. It's one that I think most people consider a must-read or a classic at least. The film adaptation at the time, was the best BL anime adaptation that we had. Now we're getting more and more, and they are getting better and better, which is so nice. But I do also really recommend the film on this one. It's just, and that's the other thing, both of them have films, hour-long films as well. It's weird at how close this and Kase-san are. It's just lots of coincidental similarities. But yes, Classmates, wonderful. Can't wait for Volume 3, and I do hope with Volume 3, which is technically the end of the main story, that we will see the spin-offs and the sequels, because this is an ongoing series, and Nakamura is still writing it. So I do hope we see the entirety of it in print in English, because I will definitely buy it and continue to support it. Finally, for manga, we have a series that isn't even technically manga, kind of. And it is a BL, of course, but this is Star Collector Volume 2 by Anna B. and Sophie Schonhammer. This is a Tokyo Pop release. This is one of their it's not an original English language manga because it was originally German language, but it's not a traditional manga in that it comes from Japan, but it's really solid. First of all, let's look at these color pages. But second of all, I really like this series a lot. I'm always have some hesitations when it comes to Tokyopop manga, especially when it comes to Tokyopop original works, as it was. But no, this is wonderful. It was really, really great. I think it has a more Western perspective on a teen relationship, which is understandable because it is from Germany and it's like a completely different school structure, and teens behave in like a somewhat different way, or the pressures on teens are similar but different, and I think the expectations on teens are different. So it feels, I think, a little bit more relatable, especially if you are from a Western country compared to Japan. So I would recommend it even just for that, but I do really like both of these characters. I think that the way they work through their problems and keep open lines of communication, or try to figure out that they need to do that, is something that is done really, really well, represented really well, because I think that's a big issue that teens have when they're in relationships, and because they think they can handle everything, and then their partner gets upset because they don't trust them, and then all these sorts of things happen. And that is, I mean, if you have ever met a teenager, especially one who's in a relationship, these are all things that are pretty prevalent issues. And the way that they handle these and have conversations about them and sort of accept each other and try to problem solve their issues is really nice. Again, really like the female characters in this one, especially Zoe is her name, I think. The friend, the mother is wonderful. It's just all around really good. And if you like BL, then check this one out. As I said, it's not technically like Japanese manga, but it certainly feels in line with some of the really, really good, decent titles of BL that we're getting. And I hate to recommend Tokyopop titles, but I don't want this one to be ignored just because it is a publisher that I do have issues with, because it's worth reading. And these two women have put out a really, really decent comic, and I really enjoyed reading it. I do want to reread it now as well. So that is everything that I got for this month of September. About average for what I get, but a lot of really exciting things. Some great debuts, some fantastic continuations of series that I absolutely adore, and of course the finale of a series very near and dear to my heart that is a little bit quirky and weird, and that is going to be hard to replace, so I do hope to reread it very, very soon. There are some really solid light novels in this particular pickups, which is really encouraging to see, because I do like light novels, but there are particular genres that dominate the market right now that I'm not super duper into. And if you were interested in any of the titles, especially light novels that I talked about, I will link my particular reviews for them in the description below, as I said. I also got some just various odds and ends for anime, so finishing up some, or just kind of getting gaps here and there for certain things, and also getting some other things that were cheap at the time, and just trying to optimize where I can. So let me know your thoughts on any of these titles. Have you read any of them? Especially the debuts. I always like hearing people's thoughts on the newest stuff that's coming out. Any of the things that are continuing, or if you're like me and you're reading Dorothy DOro, how you felt about the finale. I'd love to hear all of your thoughts, or also on these anime or light novels. I love reading your comments. As you guys know, I do try to reply to each and every single one of them. I will have a first impressions video for both Way of the House Husband and Phantom Tales of the Night. I was meaning to do one for Phantom Tales of the Night before this video came out, but I just, again, haven't had time, and I've been pretty strapped, guys. I had like 3 exams, and then I've had also 5 assignments over the last 3.5 weeks, so forgive me that I haven't really prioritized YouTube stuff. But I also, if you don't follow my channel, or if you missed it, I did last week post the Yuri episode for the podcast that I co-host with Whimsical Pictures. That's on this channel as well. So listen to that if you are a fan of that type of genre. We do talk about a lot of different titles there. We talk about the history of it, where Yuri started and how it's evolved. And even if you're not a fan of Yuri manga, maybe check it out, because I think it'll give a little bit of insight to the demographic, or to the genre as a whole, and to all of these various manga that we're getting. I've been recording a very long time, guys. Apologies for the size. But thank you guys so much for watching. I will catch you, as always, in my next video. In the description, all of my social media links will be there. You can follow me on Twitter, on Instagram. I'm on there fairly regularly, more so Twitter than Instagram though. And if you enjoyed this video, I'd appreciate a subscribe, but of course, up to you. This is definitely a channel where you have to be prepared for long videos, unfortunately. And as well, as always, my book depository affiliate link is in the description below. It's there if you wish to use it. I almost always use Book Depository, especially since Amazon has been giving me so many problems with damaged books. So if you want to use it, it's there. Don't feel obliged to, though. I just, if you wanted to. But yeah, as I said, thank you guys so much for watching. I'll catch you in the next video. Bye till then.